It's there. There we go. Okay. Awesome. Okay. Very good. Very good. Wonderful. So welcome. Today we're going to be talking about anxiety issues, pain, and fatigue. We're going to detail the kind of the network that connects those particular big conditions to the vagus nerve. And so we got a good video planned for you today. And all of it will be posted in the chat here on Facebook as we go through. So thanks so much for joining. My name is Sterling Cooley, and we'll be getting into it in a second. But before we do that, I always like to start these videos off with just a quick breathing exercise. I call it the simultaneous squeeze. And what we're going to be doing is squeezing your diaphragm on a big set of lungs full of air. You're going to hold that air in, and for 5 seconds, you're going to squeeze it really tight, like this, and it's going to activate your vagus nerve very powerfully, and your brain's going to have a bunch of acetylcholine and dopamine pumped into it, and you can kind of tangibly feel like, what is vagus nerve stimulation just from that one breath? So you can kind of get an insight into what we're all about here. So so please join me. We're going to do a 3, 2, 1 countdown. You're going to take a big deep breath in, like that. You're going to take a sip of air, extra air at the top. Take more air than you think you can get. Then you're going to close your mouth, close off all orifices of air, and then you're actually going to try and blow that air out. It's kind of complicated for some people. I don't know why people don't get this, but whatever. It's like you're going to be blowing out air out of a balloon, but without letting any air out. And you're going to kind of squeeze like that, but with a full set of lungs of air, okay? And then you're going to hold that really tight for 5 seconds, really going to squeeze it. And as you keep coming to these videos, you'll get better and better each time. And then after 5 seconds, I'll say, and now breathe out. And then you'll slowly breathe out through your mouth for 5 seconds, 5 slow seconds. Just like that, okay? So ready? Simultaneous squeeze starts now. 3, 2, 1, go. Sip of air. Hold and squeeze. And slowly exhale. Very good. Okay. So that's it. How do you feel now? Do you feel different from when this video started versus right now? I know I do. This one always makes me feel like, ooh, kind of like, ooh, what a way to start a video off, right? I'm like, oh, I kind of got high just right there. So, all right. So let's crack into it. Main order of business is we're going to be talking about anxiety issues, pain, and fatigue. These are very, very, very big symptoms that I often see come in on the request form for why people, because people kind of have to fill out a little application, or they're asked to fill out an application when they join the Facebook group. And I reviewed the last 500 people who joined, and out of a word cloud, anxiety, pain, and fatigue were the biggest repeated words when people join the Facebook group. So I was like, okay, clearly this is a substantially underserved area in this space. So let's talk about it, right? So generally speaking, when we're discussing these topics, obviously, just so you know, my expert level here, what allows me to be able to speak to this is I don't believe that anybody should, stay in their lane or anything like that. My background's in biotechnology development, using ultrasound to modulate the human body, modulate the human brain activity, and also modulate vagus nerve activity in the neck, the ear, and the rest of the abdominal cavity. So I have a lot of experience in really doing stimulation of the vagus nerve itself and eliciting activation. So I know what that looks like tangibly. I've been doing neuromodulation for 12 years. So 12 years so far, and no end in sight, right? Business is booming. People are very interested in this stuff. So anyway, that's how I have some level of expertise to be able to speak to these issues, okay? So we're clear on that. But generally speaking, in terms of anxiety, pain, and fatigue, you don't have to have all three of them together. I hope you don't, but it can happen. But each of these have a unique connection to the vagus nerve. And once you see the connection, something should kind of light up in your brain. You'll go, oh, okay, I see how these things are connected. I see how this is tangibly like part of this Marvel universe of symptoms that we want to address. So, obviously these are common things that people feel and experience in their life. These conditions can significantly alter the quality of your life, and the overall well-being of your life and everything like that. Now, there are various treatments available for these conditions, but an often overlooked aspect of dealing with anxiety, pain, and fatigue is the vagus nerve. It's very often ignored at the expense of the patient's well-being. But when we take a closer look at how the vagus nerve interacts with these unique conditions, we start to unlock kind of a hidden pathway, a network in the brain and the neck and the body that connects anxiety, pain, and fatigue. So let's kind of unravel this picture, shall we? So the vagus nerve, if you don't know, is the longest and largest cranial nerve in your whole body. You have multiple cranial nerves in your body. You've got 12 primarily. You actually have 13, but it goes up to 12, and there's a zero nerve, so it's kind of interesting. But your vagus nerve is the 10th cranial nerve. It runs out of both sides of your brain, runs down your neck, goes down to your heart, your lungs, your stomach, your intestines, your spleen, your kidneys, your liver, your gallbladder. It just goes all over the place. It's pretty much everywhere from the neck down, all the way down to your adult bits, if we're, being PG here. So your vagus nerve goes all over the place. Now, typically, when something bad happens to the vagus nerve, you can start to experience any number of these wide-ranging symptoms that nobody wants, right? So nobody wants anxiety, nobody wants pain, and nobody wants fatigue. These things suck. Just factually, you don't want them. But they happen, and people will clamor for solutions, pills, surgeries, psychotherapy, anything and everything to try and resolve those issues. So people do a lot to try and fix the problem. But sometimes the things that they do to fix the problems can actually make the solution space more difficult to resolve in the future. For instance, take like drinking alcohol, for instance. If we look at anxiety and pain, drinking alcohol can, in a way, address anxiety, and it can address pain. Maybe not so much fatigue, not in even the short term to long term. So it's not going to address fatigue so much, but anxiety and pain, alcohol, for instance, can temporarily, I'm not making a recommendation for alcohol here, but I am saying that these are things that can be used to address those. Big disclaimer here, or spoiler alert, alcohol can help with anxiety and pain. Hopefully I'm not the first person who's ever mentioned that in your cognitive space. So anyway, here's the problem though with alcohol. What we do know is that the way that alcohol works in the body is that over time, because of its toxic metabolism effects, it creates something called acetaldehyde, which is a byproduct of your body's attempt to destroy alcohol. And acetaldehyde conglomerates in your neck and your throat and in your stomach, two big areas where you have a high concentration of vagus nerve fibers. So when you're drinking, like especially hard alcohol or really any kind of alcohol long term, you think wine isn't bad? Wine, I have one of my favorite bands in the entire world. I'm a child of the 80s. Tears for Fears, my favorite band ever, right? I've seen them live like 3 times in my lifetime. I think they're a fantastic band. Everybody Wants to Rule the World, 1985, one of the most incredible songs. Everybody wants to rule the world. What a landmark song. Did you know that the lead singer, Roland Orzabel's wife, died because of her alcoholism due to wine? She would drink one basically a half a bottle of wine every single night. And she passed away strictly because of it. I believe it was liver cancer of some sort. And it wasn't pretty at the end. So, alcohol has definitely taken away some bright lights in our world for sure. So the breakdown of acetaldehyde in your throat and in your stomach is neurotoxic. And what we found is that over time, that neurotoxic metabolite of alcohol reduction in your body actually deteriorates the function of your vagus nerve. And the more that you drink, the more you eat away at the nerve in your throat. And your vagus nerve only passes down right here through your esophagus. So you're glugging down alcohol, wine, beer, hard liquor, whatever it is, right? Even, I have some kombucha here. It's got 0.5% alcohol. I'm not going to claim that kombucha is going to, kill you or anything like that, but I don't know. I mean, we don't have long-term studies. Kombucha is relatively new in the mass market, right? But larger amounts of alcohol absolutely destroy your vagus nerve. And how we know that is we've done, post-mortem analysis of alcoholics. And fortunately, some alcoholics, I'm not trying to be mean here, but they did at least one good thing in their life at the end, right? Alcoholics aside, is that they donated their body to science. And they allowed researchers to, not to get graphic here, but to surgically inspect their vagus nerve. And they found that the vagus nerves of alcoholics, who were chasing anxiety and chasing pain with alcohol, had I'd say a 30 to 40% deterioration in the myelin sheath around and inside their vagus nerve. I mean, we're talking like pretty severe levels of nerve damage from long-term drinking. So if you're like, oh shit, this is my wake-up call, then I fully support you in your decision to stop drinking completely. If you want to make that decision here and right now, I fully bless your decision, right? It's not pretty. So in attempting to fix anxiety and pain by looking towards alcohol, for instance, and that could even widen up to other pharmaceuticals. I made a post today on my Facebook page, my personal page, just about the dangers of benzodiazepines, Xanax, Klonopin, benzodiazepine class drugs, and they have a similar effect profile. Did you know that there's a similarity between alcohol and benzodiazepines that most people don't understand, but most people are never told? Benzodiazepines, in a large part, in my observation, right, is generally speaking that a benzodiazepine is a pill form of alcohol. It's almost the same kind of effect in your body, right? So if alcohol has that effect on your vagus nerve, benzodiazepines also have that effect on your vagus nerve. So again, chasing anxiety with benzos, which a lot of people do, which is unfortunate, and it's only the people who tried to quit benzodiazepines who have gone through a nightmare who will say, yep, you're right, that was a mistake, I wish I wouldn't have gone on it at all. And then in the same comment thread, you'll see people, oh, anytime I have any anxiety, I pop a Xanax. It's the only thing that helps. I'm like, hun, listen, you think those other women were different? No, they did the same thing. That's why I'm telling you, it's a very dangerous thing to be on, okay? That's why I'm making this comment, right? That's why I'm making this post here, to raise awareness about some of the repercussions of chasing anxiety and chasing pain with some of these chemical interventions. So, again, and then for pain medication, there's opioids, there's Tylenol, there's lots of things you can do in those cases. But oftentimes what you find with these pharmaceutical grade medications for anxiety, pain, and fatigue, and also not to mention disassociatives, Benadryl, Ambien, sonoluminescent disassociative drugs that help you go to sleep, right? Or things that keep you awake longer for fatigue. A lot of these things can have kind of long-term bad effects on the body, really kind of toxic effects with long-term usage, right? Used sparingly, or I don't know, I like coffee. I don't think coffee's that bad, right? I'm not like oh no, you can't have coffee. So I think there are some forms of things that help with fatigue, but coffee is not a fix for getting poor sleep. So you can never fix it that way. So there are ways to address these areas that I think the reason that, this Facebook group, for instance, let's take an account, 24,000 members of this Facebook group as of this week. We just approved like another 260 people just this morning. Clearly, if those interventions were like picture perfect and worked totally great, which they totally don't, this group would not have grown this much. So people are obviously out there looking for some kind of solution that is not so harmful on the body. And they're not wrong. They're not wrong, and especially in looking towards what about the vagus nerve? What is it about the vagus nerve that keeps coming up in searches and in TikTok videos and their Instagram feeds? Why do I keep on hearing the word vagus nerve in association with anxiety and fatigue and pain? And it's because there's some really tangible, really hands-on research and real people out there in the world, friends, family, your neighbors even. There are a lot of people around you who actually may have a habit of stimulating their vagus nerve every day. And they're living healthy, sustainably healthy lives. And they're free of anxiety, pain, and fatigue. So that's why, I think this unleashing and unmapping the network of the vagus nerve is really, really important. Now, why does anxiety come up, right? Anxiety is the number one reason given for why people are joining this Facebook group. So I totally understand and can appreciate that that's a big topic of interest. Why does anxiety develop? Primarily, anxiety develops because your body shifts out of the vagus nerve relaxation state into the alternate state of the sympathetic fight or flight response. Your body is in a state of panic, potentially, kind of a state of fear, a state of uncertainty, kind of a chronic uncertain state. And that can cause a lot of body, just like a not good feeling in your body. And that can manifest in terms of like anxiety. Then that can impact your sleep, which then you wake up feeling fatigued. And then more fatigue creates more inflammation, and inflammation can lead to pain throughout your whole body. Somebody in the Facebook group just last week said, "I feel pain in my rib cage. What could that be?" And somebody's like, "Oh, have you tried releasing your deep inner childhood trauma? That could be it." I'm like, there's a condition called costochondritis, and it's a condition where the interface between your rib cage and your cartilage in your sternum starts to inflame and get bigger, and it causes some compression of the nerves, and that can cause some pretty severe pain. So inflammation itself can absolutely cause pain. Rheumatoid arthritis, fibromyalgia, these are pain conditions for sure. Fibromyalgia is another big key word in people kind of joining a Facebook group like this. So if you are chronically in an anxious state, even if you don't think you're anxious, your body might act like it's anxious. This is when your vagus nerve is off. When your vagus nerve is gone bye-bye, when it's out to lunch, your body has no other option. It has no other track to choose other than the sympathetic system, the fight or flight network. That's the adrenaline-fueled, I'm going to die, something bad's going to happen, I'm panicking. That's anxiety, right? That anxiety sustaining itself leads to deterioration of your sleep. Deterioration of your sleep, of those full 8 hours of deep, restful, restorative sleep, is what then creates the conditions for widespread body-wide inflammation. Too much inflammation in your body can then lead to deterioration of crucial nerve endings throughout your fingers, your arms, your chest, your whole body, and that can then cause pain. So anxiety is a condition where your vagus nerve is not involved nearly at all. When you take someone who is typically anxious and you do stimulate their vagus nerve, the anxiety can go away completely. Like it can just go, just gone, right? Just like that. It's not, you don't have to do a lot of work. Generally speaking, you need to re-involve the vagus nerve. You re-involve your parasympathetic vagal network, this vagus system. That's the secret, right? So if your body is in a state of anxiety, you absolutely need to involve your vagus nerve as a first order of business and not reach for alcohol. Don't reach for drugs. Don't reach for, benzodiazepines, Xanax. Horrible way, absolutely horrible way to resolve anxiety. Terrible way. Take it from me. I've never touched a benzodiazepine in my life, and I'm thankful that I haven't. But I've had so many clients throughout the years who were put on this stuff without being warned about the side effects and what kind of debilitating withdrawal symptoms will arise from trying to quit benzodiazepines eventually. It's almost impossible, basically. It's almost, I think it's on the same tier as trying to quit heroin, but they'll never tell you that, right? Doctors don't warn you about this stuff. So we need better solutions for sure, right? Like I said at the beginning, if those drug-based interventions and if alcohol, all these things were just like, hey, it fixed my anxiety and I feel great and there's no other problems, right? I don't think I really hear that too often. So clearly there's some kind of desire for something better. Now there are lots, so cool. Are we clear? Type clear or yes in the chat. I just want to check on Facebook and just see if you're following. Oh, man, I'm so sorry about the audio. I'm just gonna try to turn up the audio a little bit, just squeak it up a little bit. Man, I'm on a roll too. Oh, that sucks. I don't know why. I have this microphone. I'm like, do I need to speak into it like this? Anyway, so I'll try to speak louder into my microphone or whatever. So yes, cool. So you're following the general principles of what I'm laying out. That's fantastic. Thank you, Lori. Thank you, Charlene. And thank you. Good to see you, Natalie. Okay, good. So that's better with the audio. Sometimes it's just a small adjustment with the slider on my end. But, not to get off track here because I'm really on a roll today. This is coming out really, really good. So generally speaking, if we unlock that there is a vagus nerve connection, how do we know that there is a vagus nerve connection here? Fortunately for humanity, there are a lot of people walking around who have either a daily practice of humming or massage of their vagus nerve. You can kind of stick your finger in here and massage it, or you can do breathing practices that can tangibly like increase your vagal tone, like what we did at the very beginning. Awesome. Thank you, Lena. Good. Okay, good. You can hear me way better. Fantastic. Yay. So there are people walking around today that actually have vagus nerve implants in their neck. Can you believe it? They actually have like a pacemaker. When people's hearts start to fail on them and they have to have a pacemaker implanted in their chest to stimulate their heart so that their heart will pulse properly. There are an amount of people, close to about 300,000 people around the world. 300,000. That's a lot. That's the size of a large town in the United States, like a little mini city of people with the pacemaker, but connected to their vagus nerve. And what we found is that those who have their vagus nerve stimulated, and the reason they got the implant in the first place was because of something like epilepsy, seizures, right? Stimulating the vagus nerve can almost eliminate seizures, which is a really debilitating condition. But what they found is that one of the biggest benefits of that implant initially, back when it was started in the 2000s, this is relatively young technology. I'm older than vagus nerve stimulation technology in this context. And, it's probably like around 20 years old now. That they noticed that a tangible benefit for those folks who had the implant for just epilepsy we're like, oh my God, I used to have terrible panic attacks and terrible anxiety, and now it's just gone. It's gone. What's happening? And this led people to investigate further to elicit, what is this connection between the vagus nerve and anxiety? And I think people who know the body well enough know that there is obviously a connection. If you've ever done breathing practices or cold plunges or ice cold showers or any of these things that seem to activate the vagus nerve, you know that those have a good effect on decreasing anxiety and decreasing pain and decreasing fatigue, right? So that's how we know how much the vagus nerve is involved. So that for me, in my mind, that's pretty clear cut, right? Just from a theoretical perspective, there's a theoretical perspective of the vagus nerve's involvement in anxiety, in that the vagus nerve, when it's active, counteracts the anxiety system in your body. So your vagus nerve is the polar opposite. It's the yin to the yang, the yin and the yang, the alpha and the omega, right? The red and the blue, the water and the fire, right? They bounce each other off. They bounce off of each other. They regulate each other. If you don't have any water, the fire rages, terrible anxiety, terrible inflammation. You need some water with your fire. You can't have just water though, because then you're going to be like, I'm lethargic, I want to sleep all the time. So you can't just have one or the other. So using these drug interventions just kind of bam and hit the central nervous system to try and numb ourselves down has some severe repercussions on the tail end, on the medium to long term, when you start doing drug-based interventions for controlling anxiety and controlling pain. I mean, we all know that, benzodiazepines for anxiety are very common and rife with really horrific side effects. We know the same thing with pain medications, also highly addictive, very difficult to get off of, right? Fatigue, using uppers and these kinds of things, or sleep aids, also have their own class of really debilitating side effects. They are not healthy for you. Like you obviously people are going to be on these things, right? Me saying this isn't going to change the mass behavior of probably 1 billion people on the planet that are using any number of these things, or a combination of all three, right? God forbid that you're on Xanax, opium and Ambien all at the same time, right? Can you imagine, right? What a life, right? Just throw in some cocaine and some alcohol and some weed, you'll be flying high. So we don't want to go down that route, because you start taking one drug to mask the side effects of the other drug, and it just becomes this really difficult game to try and manage. And so that's where, again, they found that stimulating the vagus nerve in that kind of a situation where it's this like whack-a-mole, I'm taking this medication to mitigate the side effects of this medication, is that if they could just stimulate the vagus nerve, that they could eliminate almost all three of those things all at the same time. Eliminate the anxiety, the fatigue, and the pain. Like, boom, right? So if you're like, okay, now we have a theoretical basis for how that works. We do know that when someone's having an anxiety attack and you can stimulate their vagus nerve in time, that they immediately calm down, and the anxiety is just like, oh, okay, cool, I'm good, I'm calm, I'm cool, I'm collected, I'm back, right? That's what happens when you activate the vagus nerve, because vagus nerve acts as the counter regulator to anxiety. So we know that theoretically, but we also know it empirically, right? In terms of data points, like I said, there are 300,000 people walking around today that have the implant in their around their vagus nerve, and it's getting stimulated, and that's going up by, I'd say 50 to 100,000 every year at this point in time. So there's more and more people getting vagus nerve interventions that are helping them get off of really bad medications. And vagus nerve stimulation from the implant perspective has almost zero close to 0% negative side effects, adverse reactions, or any kind of contraindications. It's extremely safe. It's well tolerated in almost every person who gets it. It's safer than heart surgery, basically. Like it's pretty incredible how good this stuff works. But it's an implant. It's expensive. You got to go in every 10 years to go get a new battery. So you have to install a new battery in your vagus nerve implant if it's under your skin. So that's another kind of level of dependence on the medical system that not everybody wants to sign up for. And to be fair, everybody watching this, out of all the people watching this live and all the people watching the replay, I don't think a single one of you is ever going to get an implant, right? So I'm not going to sit here and I'm not going to try and pitch you on a vagus nerve implant. So if that's what you're thinking, oh man, this guy's going to spring on me some special deal, 20% off of vagus nerve implants. It's not coming. It's never happened. It's most likely never going to happen. I mean, I'm open to the possibility. What that would be cool. Can you imagine affiliate commission on a $16,000 surgery? I couldn't say I would not do that. If it was a person who is medically approved to get a vagus nerve implant and I pointed them in the right direction, I can't say that I would turn that down. That'd be pretty great. But anyway, we know fundamentally that stimulating the vagus nerve does directly interact with anxiety, with pain, and with fatigue on those levels. A big connecting point between anxiety and then fatigue and then pain is the inflammation that happens. Because when your body is in this constantly anxious state, in the background, there are little like engines that are pumping out smog in your body. And if your vagus nerve isn't there, like your vagus nerve kind of, metaphors are imperfect here, but a metaphor that you could think of is think of a big factory, right? That's your body. And there are little tiny engines all over your kidneys, your adrenal glands. And if they're just pumping out smog and fog and exhaust throughout the entire day, that's going to fill the whole factory up with this dark, thick smoke. And it's going to become really hard to breathe and really difficult to function. You can only do that for so long. A little bit at a time, not everybody's going to, get sick. But if you do that for days and days and days on end, everybody in that factory, everybody who's not working in that part of the factory is going to get sick. And that's kind of the effect of inflammation. The vagus nerve, you could think of it as almost like the HVAC, right? The high volume air conditioning, the air filtration system, the thing that tells the exhaust to clear out of the body. That's all regulated for the most part by your parasympathetic function. Your parasympathetic system, your vagus nerve in particular, is the master control switch to say, okay, it's time to, open the windows and vent out the factory, get the inflammation out of the body. That's controlled by your vagus nerve. So if you can't access your vagus nerve, you can't unlock it, you can't stimulate it, if it's not working, then inflammation is just going to build and build and build and build. And actually a lot more pain in the body is typically a result of inflammation. Now, obviously, like if you fell down and you hit your knee, if you're walking around and you hit your shin on a table or something like that, that's pain. That's not necessarily inflammatory related, but most pain conditions are. Body pain, fibromyalgia, rheumatoid arthritis, a lot of body pain is a result of that constant, slow churning buildup of inflammation throughout the body. Inflammation in the brain can also cause sensations of pain that aren't actually there, right? If your brain thinks there's pain, it's pain. It's not like it's just in your head, but the neurons are like thinking that they're receiving signals from your body when there's nothing fundamentally wrong in those parts of the body, right? You're like, my hand hurts, but I've gotten all the blood tests and all the scans, and there's nothing wrong with my hand. Sometimes you would say, well, could it be the neurons, the nerve pathway that goes into the brain? Could there be something irritating that's giving the indication or phantom pain to your brain, right? So it's a neurological pain that's happening. And that can be that's absolutely a result of inflammatory cycles that happen in the body. So regulating inflammation in the body and in the brain and your nervous system is like of utmost importance. That's why, at the main cover photo of the Facebook group here is live a life that's free of inflammation. That is the name of the game here. Vagus nerve stimulation to reduce and eliminate inflammation throughout your body. That's really, really important. And vagus nerve stimulation is one of the best ways to do that. It's one of the safest ways to do that. It's a drug-free option. It has almost zero side effects if done properly. We'll get into that a little bit more. But so anyway, basically an imbalance between your fight or flight anxiety network and then your vagus parasympathetic system can lead to anxiety, pain, and fatigue, right? So that indication is there. Now, so cool. So I think we've covered the main majority of that connection, right? So you're like at home, you're like, okay, if you get it, nod your head. You don't have to type anything into the chat unless you want to. But what I want to do here briefly, since we have you, is just to briefly go over a couple of options for you to try here in the meantime. Every pathway points to Vegas. So ultimately, many of you watching will most likely within the next year or two likely get a hold of some type of a device that stimulates your vagus nerve in some way, shape, or form. Okay? And hopefully for some of you, I can be a guide or a helper in that. I do happen to know a lot about the usage of technology to safely and effectively stimulate the vagus nerve. It is my work and my trade. It's my background. It's my training. So I love helping people find the right tools for that. So that can come later. But here in the meantime, I want to just share a couple of, signposts for people who may be experiencing, like, if you're like, okay, I'm definitely experiencing something in that trifecta of anxiety, pain, and fatigue. That's probably inflammation related because of an unresolved anxiety. I need to get my vagus nerve working. If that's kind of the logic chain, first order logic, then I want to give you some options of things you could start doing to help, right? If I can get you some relief right now, here, today, or give you some insight into places to look or get you some answers, that means everything, right? If I can give you value here right up front in this one video, that's a win for me. I don't, definitely don't need your money or anything like that. I want to help you. So I'm going to post in the chat here, just as I'm talking, some of the options. So first option, a really good option, is deep breathing exercises. So deep breathing exercises can be exceptionally helpful to start training and activating and stimulating your own vagus nerve. There are options like the Wim Hof method. I'll type that here in the chat. I'm a big fan of the Wim Hof method, which uses some people experience Wim Hof breathing as a little bit too much on their body. So that's a totally fair assessment. But Wim Hof breathing is definitely a powerful process to go deeper into your vagus nerve and to stimulate your parasympathetic system. Hands down, factually true. So if that's an option that you want to look at, I see a lot of people liking that too. You guys know Wim Hof. That's amazing. That was one of the things that really turned me on to the vagus nerve too, was this Wim Hof method. And so I think a lot of that kind of colors the work that I do with people from what I've learned there. And that also includes breathing, but also some ice plunges. Cold water exposure can force your body to kind of react with one thing or the other. Because when your body temperature cools down, your vagus nerve actually is forced to come back online and say, uh-oh, we have to circumvent where the blood flow is going and drain some blood out of the hands and the feet into our core. So your vagus nerve controls where blood goes in your body. So if you put your hands in cold water, you are in a way signaling, because that temperature change, for your vagus nerve to activate at least in that area. So just yesterday, if you go check out my Facebook, my personal page, I have 5,000 friends. So I might have a difficult time adding you on Facebook, as there's a limit on, I'm not trying to brag, but I can't add people right now. I have to probably unfriend some people, but on my personal Facebook page, I drove out to the beach yesterday and jumped in the ocean, and it was pretty cold. It's about 54 degrees Fahrenheit. Very, very cold, frigid cold water. But it was sunset, and the area that I live in is absolutely picture perfect and beautiful, and I love it. And so being in that cold water forced my vagus nerve system to activate, and I felt really good and refreshed from doing that. So that could be an option for you as well to explore. Honestly, being inspired to that I could go jump in the ocean and that it's not going to kill me, that was like, whoa. Because I was always told that if you get into cold water, you're going to get hypothermia and you're just going to die, right? So I thought, I can't do 30 seconds in cold water or else there's a risk. Now I'm at the stage where I can spend 10 minutes just standing up to my neck in very cold water. Now there are limits, in the wintertime up where I live in the Pacific Northwest, we have ponds on our property that you can walk into all the way up to your head, that there's a sheet of ice on the top in the wintertime. And I do remember one winter a few years ago, it must have been 2020 or something like that. So during the pandemic, I went into the ice pond at night up to my neck, and I just said, I'm just going to sit in here. I'm an experienced Wim Hofer. I didn't do any breathing. Never do any breathing in water, ever. Don't ever do it. Don't try it. Don't play with it. It's not funny. Don't do it. Okay? People have passed away from that. So that's big, big warning. Don't combine breathing and water at the same time, okay? Just like you shouldn't bring a cell phone plugged into a wall outlet into the bathtub with you, all right? Some things you just shouldn't do. But I stayed in that water for about 14 minutes, and it was so cold that it numbed all of my pain receptors. So I was at the point where I was in that water and it didn't even feel cold anymore. It was ice cold water, like at freezing point. There was already ice forming like on that layer of water. And when I got out and I started warming up again, my body started literally violently shaking. I was like, and I was like, my teeth were chattering and I could barely, I couldn't really stand up. I just had to get in a shower, but the hot, even lukewarm water felt like it was burning my skin because it was just such a difference in temperature. So, again, I've taken my cold exposure to the extremes at times. But yeah, Charlene, cold water plunge rocks, right? She knows. I love getting in cold water, taking a cold shower, something like that. A lot of people recommend it for its health benefits. So great option, right? These are some of the most like down to earth, practical things. Wim Hof method could really help you eliminate some of the big issues that you're having. Okay. So go give our boy Wim Hof some love. He's a great teacher to all of us. Now looking at some other options, right? So another option for you that can potentially help, but could be risky in the case of anxiety, is something like mindfulness or meditation. If you have pretty long-standing anxiety, it can be difficult to just sit down with yourself and to sit with your own thoughts. That totally makes sense, right? You're like, I have anxiety. Why would I want to sit down in my own brain for more than a few seconds? It's a nightmare. And I get where that sentiment comes from. But oftentimes it does kind of take that, like, what is the nature? It's that inquisitive mind, that beginner's mind that asks, why am I feeling anxiety? Where is this coming from? Where in my body is the anxiety located? Furthermore, you can ask yourself, what is the nature of the anxiety? What does it feel like? Is there a color to it? Is there a temperature? Start asking questions of the anxiety and really start to, try to narrow it down in a sense. And I've done a lot of I'm in my mid 30s. My birthday's coming up here, and I've certainly lived a long and pretty fruitful life, I would say. I've traveled all over the world. I've met famous people. I've been on television. I've helped a lot of people with their vagus nerve, right? I'm a micro celebrity in the vagus nerve world. So that's pretty cool. But certainly I've definitely invested in my fair share of coaching and retreats and meditation programs and all these kinds of things. And I remember there was this one program I went to in San Francisco, actually, and it was in 2019, pre-pandemic. So it was in person in a large office space in an unassuming building in San Francisco, something called Landmark Forum. And it's a Zen Buddhism 2-day event that's kind of oriented towards the more corporate lifestyle, right? So it's more for executive thinkers, managers, but it helps them adopt a Zen Buddhism state of mind. And I remember, these were multi-day events, like we're talking 12, 13, 14, 15 hours long. On day 2, at the end of the day, I was feeling a little fatigued. I was like, I'm feeling tired. I just was saying that to myself. And the trainer, she's like, raise your hand if you feel tired right now. And I raised my hand. And she called on one other guy to come up on stage. And she said, ask yourself, where is this fatigue coming from? Where is the tiredness located in your body? And the more he looked for it, the less clear it became where it was. But he wasn't clicking in his head. He wasn't willing. He's like, well, it's in my body. Like he wasn't willing to investigate it really, or he didn't understand the instructions from the trainer. I clearly got what she was asking him to do. And so she's like, can anybody else come up? And I raised my hand. I was like, I'll come up. I want to do this exercise. So I sat there in front of the room and she said, okay, so you feel tired? I was like, yep. And she's like, where is it? I feel it kind of in my head. And she's like, what does it feel like? I was like, it kind of feels heavy. She's like, where exactly is that? I was like, it's around my temples up here. And she's like, how does it feel? And the more I kind of chased the sensation, there was a moment where it was gone. I went from feeling fatigued after 15 days of nonstop training. Zen Buddhism is not an easy thing to do for 2 straight days. If you haven't done it before, it's so worthwhile though. I mean, was really a powerful experience. But there was a moment where it just was gone. And I was like, oh my God. And I literally just had that epiphany in front of this whole room of probably 100 or so people. And I was like, it's gone. It's just gone. I don't know where it went. She's like, round of applause. You can go sit down now. And so I was pretty blown away by that. Now that may seem like really simple. You're like, what the fuck is this guy talking about? What the fuck? No, it's really truly, it sounds simple, but there's something really deeply truthful in that, which is that through the inquisitiveness of asking your mind or asking your body, potentially, where is the pain located? What is the nature of it? What is the nature of the anxiety? While it might seem difficult to even ask yourself that, it could be a pretty remarkable journey for you to take. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend against meditation or mindfulness just because there is the potential for discomfort, right? I mean, imagine if I were sitting up there on the stage and I was like, no, I don't want to ask my body where the fatigue is. I've been up for the last 20 hours, but I'm not going to ask it anything. It would just be that would seem ridiculous on its face. And it's almost the same quality of questioning that you might do in a mindfulness practice of asking yourself, where is my anxiety? But again, this is just a live video here, and I'm not going to walk you through the whole process, but certainly there are great resources for mindfulness. Some of the stuff we do in our, actually in some of our programs does involve ultrasound stimulation of the vagus nerve just before you meditate, and that can almost eliminate that reservation against going deep. It can really put you into that nice state. So there are lots of ways to facilitate a powerful mindfulness or meditation practice. And the vagus nerve is absolutely a piece of that. That's why I bring this up. Mindfulness and meditation can powerfully activate your vagus nerve. So you might want to consider that. Here I have it in my list, and I will be posting the full synopsis of today's video as well in the Facebook group tomorrow morning, with the replay available too if you missed anything. But cold exposure, we already kind of talked about that. Another one is social connection and laughter. These are really fantastic ways to activate the vagus nerve, to activate that parasympathetic system. So finding ways to be social as much as you can is a really great option. Finding ways to laugh a little bit, to have some joy in your life, I love for me, some of the stuff I like to listen to in the background is comedy, like stand-up comedy or funny videos, right? Things where there's people, like just people hanging out, laughing about life and laughing about things. There's a specific channel on YouTube that I watch called Red Letter Media. Any super, probably none of you know these guys, but Red Letter Media on YouTube, they review bad movies from the 80s. It's kind of like Mystery Science Theater, MST, where they play the old 1950s black and white films. This is the more modernized version. They watch really bad movies from the 1980s or the 1990s. And it's really funny. There are some really bad VHS tapes from the 80s that you're like, who in their right mind said that this was a good movie to make? This is a terrible plot and everything. So I kind of I like listening to that because it's funny. And it's just, it fills me with that joy, during a work day, right? So it just kind of plays in the background a little bit, right? So stuff like that can be really helpful for getting your vagus nerve to work. But that's what I want to share for today. So those are tangible things and steps that you can take right now to start getting your vagus nerve to work. Those are some starting points, right? Signposts, right? I can only give you some initial guidance to say, go this way, go this way. It's going to be up to you to, after this video is done, is to take some action on some of these things. Everybody is different, right? Some people watching, your condition may be of the, how do I say this? Your condition may be of the level where simply the thought of meditation or the thought of heavy breathing is like, it's too much for me right now. And I resonate with that. They're absolutely, seeing that it's a possibility. And that is the unique time where incorporating something like a handheld, small, light intervention to stimulate the vagus nerve, almost like training wheels, right? Everybody learned how to ride a bike when they were kids. I had training wheels when I was a kid. My mom put little training wheels on the back wheels of my bicycle so that when I first got on the bike, I wouldn't tip over and hurt myself. Every kid, when they're new at something, deserves to have some bumpers on the sides to make sure that they aren't just constantly falling, right? So in those cases, especially if you're really new to this, there are absolutely certain types of conditions where incorporating some form of a vagus nerve stimulation device or some type of technology to help induce your vagus nerve to reliably come out of its hole is the best metaphor I could give. Is where does your vagus nerve go if it's not actively regulating anxiety? Is it curls up into a little ball and recedes into a hole and says, oh my God, ah. And so that's kind of what the vagus nerve does seem to do. And so it is useful at times to to stimulate it, to say, hey, buddy, it's okay. You can come out and play. Nothing's going to hurt you. It's fine. It's safe, right? And so stimulation of the vagus nerve can be just fantastic for doing that, right? Putting the training wheels on, giving it the ability to come out and play, and you'll have a lot more fun that way. I promise you that. It's a whole different type of life when you live a life with both systems engaged on a consistent basis. It's just a whole different ball game. And, we have lots of people who can attest to that. It's a universally known effect of having a healthy vagus nerve. So I highly encourage you to consider that. If you need you need the training wheels, you need the help, is to start considering, what tool am I going to use for this? And really be careful, though, in identifying these tools, is what is the real tangible benefit that you're going to get from them? Like, what is going to happen overall for your because again, your vagus nerve controls a lot of things. So you have to select the right type of stimulator that's going to get you effects that are positive in multiple domains and aspects of your life, because you might improve in one area but decrease in another area. You might have bad effects in one and good effects in the other. So you need to select something that kind of is a fully rounded solution, and not just again, we don't want to make the same mistakes of chasing pain, chasing anxiety, and chasing fatigue with just some solution that seems good enough. Again, your vagus nerve is one of the most important things in your body. Everything else, everything's important, but certainly life or death, I'd probably opt to lose my pinky before I lost my vagus nerve. I could live without a pinky. I certainly would not live without a vagus nerve. If I didn't have a vagus nerve, I wouldn't be able to speak. Your vagus nerve gives you the ability to speak. That would be life altering beyond doubt. I wouldn't be able to, feel hunger or laugh or anything like that. There's so many things that are tied up in the vagus nerve. So you do really need to be careful in selecting a potential vagus nerve intervention, right? So now I'm not sure what we have planned for next week. I have to look over the agenda. We'll make the announcement tomorrow on Sunday, but I do believe we're going to do somewhat of a 5-day series. I believe we'll be talking about a certain type of vagus nerve stimulator that is, I believe, some of the best of the best. So yeah, I think I do believe, just not with my calendar in front of me, is that starting on Monday all the way through Friday, we're going to be doing a multi-part series that's just as impactful. Hopefully you guys like this. Was this good? Did you guys learn some stuff? Put a yes in the chat if you're like, I feel like I learned something today. This was actually kind of helpful. If that's the case, happy to receive the feedback. If it was totally shit, please let me know. You're like, this is fucking, this is garbage. I'd also like to know that and why, but I felt like it was pretty good. But whatever. We show up and we get better as we go. But yeah. So anyway, awesome. It was great. Awesome. Thank you, Natalie. Thank you, Charlene. Good. Fantastic. So anyway, so next week we will be talking more about actual stimulation, the technology aspect of it, in looking at resolving some of these things. Yeah, I feel like I was kind of on fire today. Thanks, TK. So in conclusion, kind of wrapping things up as far as we're concerned here, your vagus nerve can be a powerful tool in managing anxiety, pain, and fatigue. Incorporating deep breathing exercises, meditation, cold exposure, social connectivity, laughter, some of these things, we can stimulate the vagus nerve and promote overall well-being. That could be really great to, help you live your best life possible. And as I think is important, remember to please consult with a healthcare professional if you have any underlying medical conditions or concerns. There can be contraindications for some of these things. So it never hurts to be like, just as an experiment, try asking your doctor, hey, what do you think about the vagus nerve? Just ask them. See do they roll their eyes? Do they say, oh my God, I've been reading about that on TikTok too? If your doctor's like, yeah, I've been on TikTok a lot lately, I'd be like, I need to find a new doctor, but that's just me. Kind of creepy, but Doctors should be working, not on TikTok. Am I old fashioned here? I don't know. But anyway, so my advice is start small, be consistent, and embrace the journey towards a healthier and more balanced life. Awesome. Thanks so much. Akaki, love your name. Thank you. Learn a lot here. Good. Keep coming back for more. We do these pretty much every day of varying length. Sometimes they'll go for an hour. Sometimes they'll go for 20 minutes. We really want to get the main, brunt of what we're talking about in these videos covered. So, but great. We'll wrap it up on YouTube. So I'm going to end the stream on YouTube. Thanks guys on YouTube for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Bye-bye. And then, yeah, go